All right, morning, young designers. This one's that one you often ask about. Okay, I don't get the difference between areas of investigation and research, experimenting, and testing. All right, so to make them all pretty easy, we're going to do some graphics here. I'm going to show you some examples and remind you the acronyms. So AOIs is your areas of investigation. In other words, when you're doing your project, what things do you need to investigate and how are you going to do them? That part happens in your proposal stage. So when you're planning your project and thinking about what you're going to do, then fast forward over to your actual RENT of DIMTNT. So in other words, your actual research, experimentation, testing of design ideas, materials, tools, and techniques. Okay, that's when you actually do it. So that tends to happen either just before you're starting your project or during your project. But let's look at some examples for this. So first up, let's think of some areas that we need to investigate. And I'll draw them in like pizza patterns or something like that, okay? We know we're going to have to investigate stuff about cost, all right, because we need to know how much things cost. We probably already also want to think about style, right? So let's just say we're making a mirror or a bedside table or some cool piece of memorabilia. All right, style's important if it's going to look modern, if it's going to look old, if it's going to look natural. There's lots of different styles or design ideas that you'll need to investigate. You're probably going to need to think of materials. Okay, so what is it going to be made out of? All right, you've probably got to think about pie pieces are getting bigger. Safety, safety, and how you're going to make something. Joining, right? So how you join components together. Finishing, what you do to finish it, paint it, oil it, lacquer it, okay, stain it. Let's go one more. Let's go aesthetics and how to make it look cool. Aesthetics. Okay, so we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 different things to investigate. Now we've got to figure out how we do those things, okay? So I'm going to come over to the RENT tree here. So this tree here is the tree of RENT, all right? And there's 4 big branches up here. So basically, whenever you have to research or experiment with something, you're going to be doing one of these. You'll either be testing it, you might set up an experiment, okay, science style, right? Or you might do some genuine research. And I'll start with that one in a sec. Let's just say our first area of research is about design ideas. All right, so flicking back over here, I would say that style is going to fit into my design ideas. Okay, now how am I going to do that? Well, I'm probably going to research. Now, there's lots of different ways to research. The most common one you guys do is generally you're going to look at something, you'll type something into the URL or you'll Google, then type in what you want to look at and find some images. All right, so for me, if I go on my laptop, I think one way to research, all right, if you can see here, all right, that's a Pinterest board. Now, using Pinterest is pretty cool, and you can see there's a lot of different samples of kids' memorabilia projects on there. All right, there's Charlie's mirror thing. There's a little box. There's some another cool mirror over there. A crown that Tiara made, or no, not Tiara. What's the name? She made a tiara. Anyway, I forgot that one temporarily. But there's a few different projects there. That dress made out of music notes from one of Blake's musicals or something was pretty cool. So researching by looking at ideas is one way of researching. Okay, now just saying you've done it, well, that's not really going to show evidence of your research, but actually producing a Pinterest board with annotations about what you've liked about each of those images, that would be showing some genuine research, okay? Your phone, even though we don't let you use that at school, is a pretty handy tool as well, all right? So when you're looking at images, and that's the one I like there, okay? Charlie Stewart and Gab Prevost is in that picture there. But that mirror, I thought, was one of the favourite projects I've had in the last couple of years for memorabilia. But there's a lot of research, investigation, and testing that had to go into that. Anyway, back over to the RENT tree. So for our style one, what I've done for style, okay, my how has been I'm going to look at Pinterest boards and other projects and annotate things I like and don't like. That's the method. All right. Now let's say we pick another technique. let's say we look at aesthetics, all right? And you go, all right, I'm going to make a cool table or mirror or whatever, and you think of something, you go, you know what, I really want to work with veneers or patterns. So you go, all right, well, my how, for this one, after doing a little bit of research and looking at ideas and stuff, you might decide that you want to actually test it out, okay, and physically make some veneer samples. So in my thing here, I'm going to physically make some veneer samples, all right? So we come over here and we go, all right, DI, I'm looking at, this is probably going to be tools and techniques over here. So we'll come over to this branch here. This is my tool and technique branch. That one might be merging together, okay? And I'm going to talk about experimenting, we'll say, experimenting with making actual samples. So here's a couple here. Now, I can't remember who actually did this one, but this one we went and laser cut a particular pattern on a few different types of veneers, and then we glued them together. It might have been Peyton Brindle. So you can see we've got them different angles and experimenting with how to physically do this to get an idea about what this would look like could be really cool as a frame or really cool as a tabletop surface, okay? That's one experiment. Another one, I remember this one was Darcy Ayres when she was in year 10 and looking at different ways to use veneers for her tabletop. So she's physically cut out all these veneered patterns and glued them on to make a Surfat Thurul little plaque, emblem, logo, whatever. So that's physically experimenting with ideas. Okay. All right. Let's have a look at something else we've got to look at. All right, materials. Now, we all know that most people pick materials based on what's put in front of them. So the teacher goes, here you go, use this. And they go, oh, yeah, okay, I'll use that, no worries. Well, things that you can do, you can look at things like this. This is a book. I know a lot of people don't use books anymore, but this was actually the first book I bought with my own money for my education, okay, or for being a teacher. Now, we go and use a book and go, let's have a look. Hang on, there's a contents page somewhere in here. This tells me the stuff I need to look at. So if I want to do some research on tools or wood or techniques or joints or whatever, I can, hang on, let's go wood, page 8, see what it tells me. Oh, hang on, there's a lot of interesting. Oh, the structure, okay, where it comes from the trees. And if I scroll through, oh, wow, it's starting to tell me specific properties about specific materials. And these are the tables I like. All right, so this, if you scroll through all these different types of timbers, it'll show you an image and it'll tell you its botanical name, some other features about it and properties, whether it's very resinous, it's coarse, heavier, straight, coarse grain, stable. It tells you a lot of the information you actually need to know about why you would pick a certain material. Okay, so you could actually look in books. Okay? Go to a library, right? They're fun. All right, that's another way of research. Okay, so if we're doing our material over here, the M branch, we're going to research in a book. All right, sweet. Now, when we're also looking at materials, we don't just have to research stuff, we can physically test them out. So I could get my materials and I could do some tests. I know a fun test that people often like to do is we set up some destructive testing where you can hit it with a hammer to see how it, if the surface dents or scratches or breaks if you jump on something, okay? They're legitimate tests you might need to do for materials, okay? But there's a whole lot of those things you could do, all right? Now, another factor, I won't go through all of them, all right, but let's just get to cost, all right, because cost is a big thing. You're always going to have a budget, okay, and whatever that budget may be will help you make your decisions on cost. So ways we look at that, people often will just ask the teacher, how much does this cost? Usually I'm not going to tell you straight up because I don't want to do your work for you. There are ways you can find how much things cost. Google is one method, okay? You can always look up stuff, you know, search things at Bunnings, or we have some physical resources. So here's an old price list from, let's cover who it is there because I don't think we use them anymore. All right, but an old price list there. And as we scroll through, it tells you the type of timbers and the rate it would cost per metre, plus a delivery fee and all those sort of things. And there's your dimensions down the side to tell you what you need. All right, so you could determine your cost there. If you want to know more about costs, you can probably watch that other video I whipped up, okay? Now, I know I've talked a lot about wood here, but similarly, I've got a Textiles Direct booklet here that has physical samples, all right, built in the book here. Where's the physical samples? There are physical samples somewhere, different colours costs, all right, buttons cost this much, there's an order form there physical samples I can touch are all here. All right, so you can determine what things cost by looking at information in books, brochures, or online. Okay. Now, I've kind of identified that when you're doing your research, okay, that ends up being a really big tree. Okay, there's a cartoon tree. I want to use green with my marker, but it doesn't turn out well on the whiteboard, so that's why I stuck with the black. But I tend to say that, particularly for year 11, 12 projects, you want at least 12 examples. Okay. Now, the tools and technique ones, lots of the things you can do are physically recording how you use a tool, as well as using your on-guard safety, all right? But your tools and techniques, how you learn things, or getting demonstrations from the teacher are genuine examples of RE&T, all right? You're learning about the tool and the techniques when the teacher shows you how to do something. All right. Lastly, what I want to go through is a couple of formats, okay? So I'm just going to quickly wipe this off. I'll wipe off around the middle. Now, a lot of people can do research, but documenting, something they forget a little bit. Oh, yeah, I did that. Okay, we've heard that 1,000 times. All right, I'm going to give you a couple of methods. So let's just say the research method you want to do was about finishing techniques. Now, I like the scientific method or the Team RC method. This is my favourite. And most of my senior students will use this method. Okay, so when it comes down to laying out your experiment, research, or whatever, let's just say that's a page. Okay, all right, the first step is the title of your experiment. That's your TE. So my title of experiment is going to be finishing techniques. All right, we'll make a nice heading. Yeah, we'll spell it right. Come on, techniques. All right, my A is then what's my aim? What's the aim of my experiment or research? What am I trying to get out? My aim is to, I'm just going to scribble these, I'm not actually going to write it, is to figure out, all right, what finishing technique I want to use for my project. What's the method? Now, this is where you're going to have a series of dot points, all right? Method one might be to ask the teacher. Ask the teacher for advice, teacher for advice. Step two might be to do a little bit of research and read up on some various information on different types of oils, paints, lacquers, whatever you're going to do for finishing, okay? Step three might be to physically acquire some samples of material. Step four would be apply the finishes or the 4 or 5 different finishes to each material. Step 5 would be to look at and evaluate what they look like. And step 6 might be asking your peers and other people to help you decide what you like. Okay? There's our method. R is your results. So show us some evidence of your results. That could be the pictures. All right? It could be video. All right? It could be some survey data if you are asking people for their opinion. But what are your results? Okay? Then lastly, your conclusion or your evaluation. So based on your research or your experimentation that you've done, what are you going to do? What's your conclusion? Are you going to use linseed oil because it was available, we had heaps of it, it's not super expensive and it's easy to wipe on? Well, if that's your conclusion, great. Maybe your conclusion is you like something but you don't use it because it costs too much or it's not available. They're all factors you've got to consider. So that's my favourite method, okay? Let's go down to a simpler one. Okay, the pine one. Now, I use the word pine because it's kind of reference to radiata pine, but most people would call this PMI. But I go with pine. So let's go again and say, all right, this time we want to investigate using the laser cutter, okay, as a technique for coming up with a cool marquetry pattern. All right. So the pine, I'm looking at. Well, what is the thing that I'm looking at? So it's this. All right. So laser cut marquetry might be what I'm researching. There's my really quick heading. All right, and I've got a picture of whatever it is. Let's just do a random pattern here. Hexagons. All right, there's my. I said quick. All right, there it is. All right, what I'm looking for is in the evaluation is come up with some positive features about using the laser cutter to do this. It might be the speed, efficiency, and accuracy. All right. The negative, that's over here, the N, okay? Negatives might be that it costs more money to run and you don't do it in a workshop, you're doing it upstairs in the computer room and it's harder to get access to. I don't know what the negative is, all right? This one I like, the interesting. Now, I know I've done them in a different order here, all right? But your interesting thing might be that you can get incredibly cool patterns because of the detail that you can laser cut something at, as opposed to trying to cut them with a little Stanley knife and a rule and whatever, okay? Another positive is definitely speed, right? Using the laser cutter is going to be so much faster than doing it by hand, okay? And then again, your E is your evaluation. All right, so based on your research and what you've done, what's your eval? What are you going to do? Are you going to use the laser cutter? Do you not like that you have to use Illustrator to figure it out, make a pattern? Would you prefer to do it by hand? Okay, that eval is up to you. That's just one other way to present your research. Okay, now if we go down to really, really simple, all right, last one here, presenting research. It's just going to be like picture pasting, okay? So research of design ideas, right? So in other words, images of things you like, research of design ideas. All right, so a really simple way is to get a whole range of pictures of stuff that you like. Now this could be done on a Pinterest board and just making sure that you add annotations to each of the images. So kind of like the pine thing here. A picture without any words is really no good. It's not telling us anything. But a picture with some information, with a little bit of annotation, can really tell us what you're thinking, why, and how it's going to impact your project. All right. Now, I've rambled on for a whole little bit there, but just to wrap up, okay? When you're trying to show evidence of your research, there's lots of ways you can do it. You can do it in hard copy. You can do it through the use of photo and video, okay? But remember the difference. Your areas of investigation is before. It's identifying what you need to research and how. And then your RENT, remember the tree, the RENT tree, all right, is when you actually do it. Okay, so I look forward to seeing the actual evidence of your research, experimentation, and testing in your folios. That'll do for now. See you guys.